Well, good morning. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Craig Coker. I'm connected to this church and the chaplain down the street at the University of Richmond, and it's wonderful to see you all. Happy Thanksgiving. Today we begin the season of Advent, and also a new sermon series looking at Advent faith through the lens of 4 traditional Christmas movies. I confess that I have never preached a sermon through the lens of one particular movie. I've used many movie illustrations, but I've never focused on one particular movie. But this is the assignment Pastor Darcey gave me. And so I'm going to do my best to reflect on how we think about Advent faith through the lens of a movie. And today's movie for Advent 1, A Christmas Carol. I'm indebted to my friend Matt Rawle and his book, The Redemption of Scrooge, for his many insights into this wonderful story. First, a refresher course for those who may have forgotten. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol was published in 1843, and the story centers on the figure of Ebenezer Scrooge. Scrooge, such a memorable figure that the very word Scrooge has entered the cultural lexicon to reflect a miserly, curmudgeonly character. Don't be a Scrooge. The story has been adapted in genre after genre, always with Scrooge taking center stage. How many other literary characters have been played by both Jim Carrey and Donald Duck? And many others, for that matter. Ebenezer Scrooge is a wealthy businessman obsessed with making money, who works his sole employee, Bob Cratchit, father of Tiny Tim, to the bone, giving him a miserly one day off to celebrate Christmas with his family. Christmas seems to bring out the worst in Scrooge, who rebels against the merriment of the season, spurns his nephew's repeated invitations to Christmas dinner, and lacks any sense of human decency, much less joyfulness. Bah humbug captures the essence of Scrooge. Dickens pulls no punches about this miserable man, saying he was a tight-fisted hand of the grindstone Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, covetous old sinner. How cheery. Dickens' story opens with 3 words. Marley was dead. Marley was Scrooge's former business partner who visits Scrooge then 3 times. The ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. An appropriate theme for Advent, in which the church gathers in the present to ponder the past, to reflect in the present on the first coming of Christ as we anticipate the second coming of Christ. In Advent, we remember the grace of Christ already born into the world and in our hearts as we ponder again the mystery of that grace being born anew year after year. Or put another way, in Advent, we remember the covenant that God made with Israel, the continuation of that covenant in Jesus Christ, and the promised future of that covenant when all things will be reconciled in Him. Like all good stories, A Christmas Carol serves as a mirror to our own lives, to ponder how the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future may reflect where we have been, where we are, and where we are going. The ghost certainly did the trick for Scrooge. Fortunately for Scrooge and for all of us, there is still time to change. And so he does. And his cold, hurt, and bitter heart is warmed by the Christmas spirit. I don't know if Dickens used Matthew's gospel as an inspiration for A Christmas Carol, though certainly Dickens would have been very familiar with Matthew's gospel, but he could have. Hear these lines from the scripture I read earlier. Keep awake, therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. Therefore you must also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour. That passage could have easily been the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, a stark reminder that each of us sits under the judgment of Christ. And the time is coming, though we know not the day or the hour, when we too will have to give an account of ourselves. Marley was dead, and we shall die too. There was still time for Scrooge, and mercifully there remains time for all of us. A Christmas Carol is more redemption play than morality tale, and yet the Scriptures teach, over and over the Scriptures teach, that our decisions matter. Our actions have consequences. The way that we treat others has moral implications. The innocent child in the manger is also the judge and the jury. The King of Kings is also the King of mercy. In this sense, the story is about Scrooge, yes. But Scrooge becomes an iconic figure, a prototype, a parable, a portal in which we can each see something of ourselves. In the way that all good literature and the Bible itself invites the reader to see him or herself in the story. The name Ebenezer in Hebrew means stone of help. Here I raise mine Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come. Ebenezer Scrooge is someone in need of help. He needs help. And yet the name has such immense negative connotations that 10 years ago, only 12 children in all of England were named Ebenezer. And one wonders why there were that many. Probably a family name. Yet even if clutching, grasping, covetous old Scrooge can be redeemed, maybe there is yet hope for us. And so here are 3 lessons we can learn from Scrooge. First, we are not prisoners of our past. It is so easy, isn't it, to be consumed by regret? Decisions we made that we wish we had not, or those things that we did but we wish we had not done, or often things that were done to us, harms inflicted upon us over which we had no control. We know, of course, that the past is the past. And yet, how often are we haunted by ghosts from the past? How often the past stays with us? Christmas is a season for children. And I suspect there is a strong correlation between the sentiments adults have about Christmas and the feelings, warm or not so warm, those same adults have about their childhood Christmases. Perhaps the Christmas spirit that lives in adults reflects our childhood memories of that holiday. Let's look at how Scrooge remembers his childhood.
Good heavens. I was bred in this place. I was a boy here.
Your lip is trembling. And what's that? On your cheek.
Nothing. Something in my eye.
Do you remember the way?
remember it. I could walk it blindfolded.
These are but shadows of things that have been. They have no consciousness of us.
I knew them. I knew every one of them. They were schoolmates of mine.
Let's go on.
This was my school.
This school is not quite deserted. A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left here still.
I know.
The solitary child that the Spirit and Scrooge approach in the abandoned schoolhouse is, of course, Scrooge. As the carriage goes by with the schoolmates, notice how he calls them schoolmates, not friends. No wonder the adult Scrooge is lonely and bitter. I came across an African proverb not long ago that goes like this: if the village does not care for the child when he is a child, when he grows up, he will burn down the village. For many people, the holidays are a difficult time because of a hurt inside that hurts all the more at Christmas. The hurting child often becomes a hurting adult. The hurting adult then hurts other people. If we do not transform our pain, we will transmit it to others. Redeemed pain can be a source of healing for ourselves and for others. The second lesson to learn from Scrooge is this: God's economy is not our economy. Life is more than work. Scrooge is a stand-in for so many of us because he is convinced that his self-worth comes from his work. If he is successful at making piles of money, he must be a successful person. The more money he hoards for himself, the more he will grow in the eyes of others, or so he believes. Dickens was writing in the midst of Britain's great industrial revolution. Many of Dickens' works are a broadside critique of a supercharged capitalism that sees people as a means to an economic ends. Scrooge views his employee, Bob Cratchit, that way. Not as a man with a life and a family and a disabled child in need of care and attention, but as labor alone, to be worked to the bone in service of the almighty pound. God's economy does not follow the same rules as the economy of management and labor, of buying and selling. The economy of God is abundance and worth and dignity, and the currency is grace and mercy. The more we give, the more we receive. The more we love, the more love grows. The more we are thankful, the more thankfulness grows. The more thankful we become. Like the old miser Silas Marner in George Eliot's novel, who loses his fortune only to discover that in place of the gold came a little girl. Here's how Eliot describes that scene in a similar story. Marner took the child in his lap, trembling with an emotion mysterious to himself as something unknown dawning upon his life. Thought and feeling were so confused within him that if he tried to give them utterance, he could only have said that the child was come instead of the gold, that the gold had turned into the child. Advent waiting is hard because through the glitz and consumerism of the Christmas season, the church asks us to receive a child who comes in place of the gold, a new dawning of God's kingdom that transforms our personal and corporate economy from supply and demand to grace and mercy. The third lesson Scrooge teaches us is this. God bless us, everyone. Scrooge has been on a journey. He has learned from his past and confronted his present. After his painful visit with the spirit of Christmas future, in which he sees his own death, bitter and alone, Scrooge awakens in a fright, only to realize that it is Christmas morning. There is still time for the deep heartache he carries to be transformed into goodness for others. Scrooge did nothing to earn this. Rather, the gift of Christmas simply dawns upon him, his clenched fists softened into open hands. He is ready to let go of his grabbing, clutching ways and receive and give. He shouts to himself that Christmas morning, I am as light as a feather, I am as happy as an angel, I am as merry as a schoolboy, I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas, everybody, a Happy New Year to all the world. Into that moment, Scrooge becomes the lost sheep that was found, the prodigal embraced at his father's door. This is the gift of Christmas. Pure grace given by our gracious God that can never be earned and only received. A gift that heals the deepest of pain and softens the hardest of hearts and is the light that once more comes into the world. This is the gift of Christmas, the blessing of God to each and every one.
A full 16 minutes late. What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?
I'm very sorry, sir. I am a bit behind on my time.
You are indeed. Step in here.
Well, it's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday.
Now, I'll tell you what, Mr. Cratchit. I'm not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, I am about to raise your salary. Merry Christmas to you, Bob. Merry Christmas, Bob. My good fellow. Then I've given you in many a year. I'll raise your salary and do whatever I can to help your struggling family. And we'll discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a bowl of Christmas punch. But first, let's make up the fires. I want you to go out and buy another scuttle of coal before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit. Off with you, Bob. We've saving to do. Hey-ho, Bob!
Yes, sir. Right away, sir.
And Scrooge was better than his word. He did all that he said he would, and more.
And to our tiny Tim, who got well, Scrooge was like a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city ever knew. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. And so, as Tiny Tim observed,
God bless us, everyone!